Thank you.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, then let's start. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Yadira Garza. I'm project manager here at Simpat, and I was invited to be the host and moderator of this discussion about .NET MAUI and Blazor talking points. It's my pleasure. So we do have an agenda. And first of all, we're going to introduce the participants today. Then we're going to go through the .NET MAUI discussion, which are basically 4 questions. And at the end, we will have a section for questions and answers. All right, so let's meet the participants. We do have Javier Pitalua. Javier has over 14 years of experience writing web applications using .NET, Microsoft technologies, and JavaScript frameworks. Javier also has a lot of experience with cloud services and Node.js projects, and he started working for Simpat 4 years ago. Then we have Marco Dominguez. Marco has over 5 years of experience, professional experience working with .NET technologies and also with PHP, Java, and some front-end frameworks such as TypeScript, JavaScript. Marco joined the company in February 2019. Another participant is Rodolfo Ortiz. Rodolfo has over 14 years of experience working with Microsoft technologies, doing web app development, creating APIs, and doing integrations. Rodolfo also has used several front-end frameworks and joined Simpat in 2019. And our last participant is Jesus Flores. Jesus has over 16 years of experience working with .NET technologies, creating solutions ranging from CLA applications to distributed systems integrations. And Jesus has been working for Simpat since day one. Thank you everyone for being here. And let's move on with our first question. Everyone has 2 minutes to answer each question, and we will start with Javier, then Marco, and Rodolfo and Jesus. As you can see here, there is a timer. So I'm going to start the timer whenever you are ready, Javier, and you will see when the timer is ending so we can move on with Marco.
I'm ready, Yadira.
Okay, so what do you think about the Write Once, Run Everywhere platforms?
I think they tried to solve one big issue that is, so for example, if you are looking to write apps, basically native apps, for example, if you will have to have at least 2 teams or one single team that it's going to be working, let's say, 4 months working for an Android version, another 4 months implementing the same logic and functionality for iOS, for example. So the right ones and run everywhere, well, it's gonna solve that problem. It's gonna let you, from one single code base, you will have uh, build that is gonna be running, for example, in multiple platforms, even in Windows. I think that it's true up until 95% of the time, because you will find sometimes that you will have to do some custom native things. So for example, if you have to use a specific feature in your device, like for example, the wide angle camera, chances are that you will have to implement a custom native um, feature that you're going to have in native, you will have to write it in native code. So I think that's my 2 cents on the topic.
Thank you. Thank you, Javier. Okay, Marco, your, your turn.
He's having connection issues. He's going to try to reboot his computer.
Okay, then let's move on with you, Rodolfo, if you don't mind. Okay, so Rodolfo, what do you think about the Write Once Run Everywhere platforms?
I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was saying that Marco is having connection issues, that he's going to reboot his computer. Sorry. I heard the question, Yadira. And thanks, Javi, for pointing out that I was muted. So I've been involved in projects that use these types of technologies, such as Xamarin. I have not used .NET MAUI, and I have also been involved in projects that use native applications, meaning that you need an Android developer and an iOS developer. I was not involved as a developer, but more like overseeing the development. And in my experience, you might choose native applications, which is the opposite of write once, run everywhere. If performance is a concern for you, otherwise, yeah, you can choose the write once, run everywhere technologies. I recommend technologies such as Xamarin or .NET MAUI if your project budget is not enough to write two separate applications, as Javi said, or if your company doesn't really focus on mobile development. In that case, it's, as a .NET developer, it's faster to understand something like .NET MAUI or Xamarin than to learn both Java and Swift, right? Because those are very different technologies. So in summary, I do recommend using these technologies for mobile development. In the project that I was involved a couple of years ago that I mentioned, that used Xamarin, the project was a success. We finished on time. I was written in C#. It ran in both iOS and Android. And also I was able to do code reviews, even though I didn't know Xamarin. I was able to do code reviews because the code is written in C#. And the developer actually that wrote the code was an iOS developer that during the project, he had to learn Xamarin and C#, and he was able to pick it up very quickly. Again, not being a .NET developer. And of course, he had some questions about some C# functionality, but our .NET team was able to help him with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodolfo. Okay, now let's move on with Jesus. Jesus, what do you think about
it? So probably if you want to include him, or I can go first, there's no problem.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. What do you think about the Write Once Run Everywhere platforms, Jesus?
Okay, well, I was thinking about this question. Basically, everyone focuses on mobile platforms, but I think that this Write Once Run Everywhere has been a paradigm since the beginning of the computers. I mean, we at the beginning we have different processors, and each processor has their own commands and the instructions for each of those. So since the beginning, we as developers will have needed to write or optimize our applications to run on the native platforms. But the trend has been to homologate everything and try to come with this kind of platforms. Even .NET, it's Write Once Run Everywhere platform. You can now write your code or your application and it will be executed in doesn't matter if you can run it on Mac OS, and in this case mobiles with Android, on iOS, on Windows, on Linux. So these Write Once Run Everywhere platforms are good as a starting point. I mean, if you're learning, you need to first focus on the application and the user, and then you need to start worrying about doing the optimizations and all that stuff. Even game developers, they use engines that they focus on the game, and then the basic engines, or the ones that are current on immersion, like Unreal and all that, those ones, Unity and all those, are you work on your application, and then the engine will target all the different devices or different platforms, and then if you need to make some optimizations, you do those. So as a starting point, right ones run everywhere platforms are good.
Excellent. Thank you, Jesus. Let's go with Marcos. Hi, Marco.
Yeah, sorry,
Welcome back.
Hello, can you hear me right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, great, perfect. So yeah, for some reason I couldn't connect to my computer, so I'm on my cell phone. So I was wondering if I will hear properly. But yeah, so I personally love the concept of being able to do anything, whatever you want to write, right? That it will run in any platform that you prefer, especially when there are a lot of options nowadays that you can use whatever language you're already proficient on. I mean, just things like MAUI, right? So you're already proficient or knowledgeable of C#, so you don't need to change the way you code things, the paradigms and the structure, the framework is already familiar for you. So it's something that I actually really enjoy to see that we have. And as it was already mentioned, it's a trend that we are trying to follow, right, in development environment world. The only thing, and there is a thing that I actually don't like, is that I believe that we are losing a little bit of the flavor that every individual language had. Like the way we do things are getting into a point where we are all making the things the same way because it's the way that is intended, or it's always the fastest way or the most efficient way, and we are kind of losing creativity in like our own slang for our languages, because there's only one way to do things now. That's the only thing that I don't actually like about write once and run everywhere. It's like any developer can do everything now. That's great, but they have to do it the same way. There's no room for improvisation or freestyle anymore. Mm-hmm.
I see. Thank you. Thank you, Marco, for your input. Right, then let's move to the next question, which is, would you recommend .NET MAUI for a mobile application, and why? Javier.
Okay, so if I were to start a new application, depending on the level of my team and the knowledge of my team, I would say to go with MAUI only if my team has shared experience with C# and net technologies. There is a thing, since net MAUI is based on Xamarin. Xamarin is a bit cumbersome to set up the first time. For example, you have to install the SDKs, for example, the Android SDKs, and you have to set up your environment, and it's a bit cumbersome to run it the first time. But I will say yes if your team has experience with .NET. But if that's not the case, then I will choose something more mature. For example, React Native. That is, if your team does not have experience with .NET, and they have experience with JavaScript, for example, they can easily adopt, for example, something like React Native. And I think that's my point of view.
Thank you, Javier. All right. So Marcos, do you recommend .NET MAUI for mobile applications?
Yeah, close to what Javier said, but instead of thinking about if my team has actual experience on working with .NET, I will only think like the other way around. Just if we don't have a native experience with any mobile language, it would be better to actually choose some solution closer to what we already know. So basically, I would say yes, I would recommend .NET MAUI for a mobile application, but well, because it is compliant with everything that is recent, everything that is modern, even things like really new to UI and UX part, like accessibility for disabled people and whatnot, like all of that is in place with MAUI, but I wouldn't recommend going the MAUI way if you know any other native language or native way in which you can program, right? So I still believe that if I knew, for example, Kotlin or Objective-C, I would prefer going that route instead of having a one-fits-all solution. But for sure, if you are a .NET developer and you want to create something that actually works really efficiently and bypasses all of the problems of getting to know, or the learning curve of getting to know another language that you might not be familiar with, especially if you've been a web developer your whole life and now you're trying to be a mobile developer. If you want to bypass all of that, all that learning curve, well, of course, I would recommend it, but only if you don't know something that is natively programmable already. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your input, Marco. Okay. So, Rodolfo,
Yeah,
you
I complete.
recommend?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I do recommend .NET MAUI. I agree 100% with what Javi and Marco said. I'll add a few thoughts. .NET MAUI is a very recent technology. I usually stay away from technologies that are very new because they are not mature enough. Now with .NET MAUI, it's different. I'm pretty sure it's different because I have the feeling that some of the Xamarin team was involved in writing .NET MAUI. So they have a lot of expertise with mobile development, and that makes me confident that .NET MAUI is stable enough and production ready, even though I know Jesus probably has more technical details on this. And yeah, I mean, you might say that it has some issues, like last week during Jesus' presentation, he had some problems with hot reload not working. But the truth is that hot reload, that specific case, was not supposed to be in the final release. It was just a feature that Microsoft included in the beta, and then removed it. But developers saw the hot reload and they complained that it was gone, and Microsoft had to add it back. So hot reload is kind of a plus in .NET MAUI. And also other benefits include that there's only one code base. And this is a big one because, again, you don't have to review two sets of pull requests, and you don't have to maintain two code bases, like one for Android and one for iOS. Now, does .NET MAUI need improvements? Yeah, as with any Microsoft product, Microsoft is going to replace .NET MAUI in a few years. It's going to be deprecated. But it would most likely be something that builds on top of .NET MAUI, same as Xamarin. Xamarin was like the predecessor of, well, it was the predecessor of .NET MAUI, and it's going to be a different story from what happened to Silverlight. I have that feeling. Silverlight. And now, having said this, if you know React as or other mobile development frameworks, as Javi and Marco said, it's preferable to stick to React, for example, and continue with React Native. Thanks, Yadira.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodolfo. All right. Jesus, do you recommend .NET MAUI for mobile applications?
Totally, and not just for mobile applications. You can also now create Windows applications, desktop applications. Those can be run on Linux or Windows and Mac. So far, we didn't have any solution or any platform integrated into the .NET environment, into the .NET Core environment. We have WPF for .NET framework, but that ended it for 4.8. So the next one, .NET Core, didn't have anything. So I would recommend MAUI for a couple of, well, there's a lot of things reasons. One is we as developers, we have, at least in Simpat, we have a lot of experience with C# and .NET. So .NET MAUI is built on top of the common library for .NET. The next one is .NET MAUI is the next iteration of Xamarin. So if Xamarin was bought by Microsoft around 2016. So there's some people from Xamarin working on MAUI. Actually, Microsoft integrated Xamarin into a platform, and this is the way to deploy everything in .NET 6 or integrate everything into one single framework. The next one is because of this is an next iteration of Xamarin. Xamarin is a very mature platform. I mean, it started as a Simian back in the days when .NET 2.0. So it has been around since .NET practically. So Simian, then they created Xamarin, which based everything on Mono, and then Xamarin for Android, Xamarin for iOS, and then came with Xamarin Forms. That was a way to have one UI for all platforms, but the specifics for each platform will be on a different project. And now we have one only project for all the platforms. So if you need to deploy your applications on several app stores, then yes, MAUI is a go. But there is another thing. So on the not so bright side, some of the integration with Visual Studio or the development platforms are not ready yet.
I know we have a Q&A section at the end, but I'm going to ask you this. So do you think learning .NET MAUI would be very difficult, time consuming, if you want to implement it in a project from scratch?
If you need to learn .NET MAUI, it will be the same if you need to learn specifics. So if your only target is iOS platforms, you will need to learn something to develop for iOS. Doesn't matter if you need to learn React Native or if you need to learn Ionic or Flutter or all that stuff. I think starting from scratch will have the same learning curve or a similar learning curve. But on .NET MAUI, we are not learning from scratch. We already have some basics, and there is a lot of libraries that will be useful. There is a very good community behind Xamarin, and it's the same community for .NET MAUI.
Okay, thank you, Jesus. We do have another question. So if you don't recommend .NET MAUI, what tool you use to write an application that needs to run on multiple platforms? And I think we already got part of the answer here, because some of you mentioned you go with React Native or any other platform, but if you could summarize to target this specific question, I would appreciate. Javier?
Sure. Well, for me, I do have experience working with React Native. And comparing to .NET MAUI or Xamarin, I think React Native, I think it has a more streamlined process of development. So for example, you don't need to have an emulator. You just write code directly in your computer and you get it reflected on your device right away. You don't You don't need to any middleware or anything in between. So I think that makes it a bit easier to work with. It has that reload feature where whenever you change something in your code, you will immediately see it reflected on your device. So for me, I think working with React Native as a developer, is a pleasant experience. Along with the fact that whenever what you learn on React Native, you basically can apply it on web applications using React JS. So my alternative tool to write multiple platforms applications will be React Native. Of course, that's my thinking.
All right. Thank you, Javier. Okay, Marco. You also mentioned one reactive, I think that was, but if you could please summarize.
Yeah, basically, well, there are several reactive languages that you could use to create a multi-platform environments. What I would do if I had to get something fast into market, maybe I would create a PWA, a progressive web app, using whatever new technology we can leverage to create one of those, so we can make use of it as if it were a native application, but it's still a web app that can run whatever we need it to run. So just like a quick summary for what a PWA is. So a PWA is basically an application that runs inside a web view that you can download for offline work directly into whatever system you want it to run on, right? So if you enter, I'm pretty sure that some of you have seen that whenever you enter any page directly on your browser from your cell phone, it tells you to download the app. So that app might not come directly from the App Store or the Play Store. It will come directly from the web page. So basically installing everything that the web page needs to run locally on your cell phone. That's basically what I would do, running a PWA. That can be done with several languages now. For example, Blazor, and I know we'll be talking about it in a bit, so I don't want to overextend my response, but yeah, so that's what I would do.
I think you muted, Yadira, but I'll answer the question. If you already know React, if someone already knows React, I would recommend taking a look at React Native. Otherwise, yeah, go with .NET MAUI in case you don't have, in case you're new to mobile development. That would be my answer.
Okay, thanks for that. Jesus.
Okay, well, for this, there are several alternatives. I mean, we have Ionic, we have React Native, we have Explorer, but in my case, I will need to learn, or the starting point will be from scratch. Probably with React Native, not so from scratch, but yeah, it's not actually, as I understood, it's not exactly the same. I mean, React works over JavaScript, and I don't know it for that. But yeah, if you don't need, or if you don't trust yet on .NET MAUI because it's new in the market, and you still want to do something for mobile or multi-platform applications, there are some alternatives that are already .NET environment. Two of those are Uno platform, and the other one is Avalon UI. Avalon UI is has a lot of people behind that, and the community is growing related to Avalon UI. they basically are coming up with a new design pattern. I mean, for .NET MAUI, you can use MVVM, model VB model, but if you don't want to stock, or if you don't want to learn that, or if you don't like all the binding and all that stuff, this new pattern, it's called it model view update, model view break, I think was. So it's a bit more streamlined. I need to just similar to how, well, not similar. I have seen example of the code and it looks pretty similar to how Blazor works, but yeah, those are the alternatives. I mean, at the end, if you don't want to use .NET MAUI, probably you don't need to run something on multiple platforms, and that means that it will be better if you just focus on the environment for that specific platform.
Okay, thank you, Jesus. Right, now this is our last question. Would you recommend using Blazor for your next project, and why, Javier?
Well, first a bit on what Blazor is. So it's basically an extension of the Razor language that we use in the MVC application framework. It runs on something that it's called WebAssembly, and I think it's the bet of Microsoft to play the game into the front end technologies. That is, I think they are pushing to the .NET developers have the experience of working seamlessly in the front end development. My recommendation is, so this is a relatively new technology. My recommendation is same as, for example, with .NET MAUI, is take it cautiously. I mean, there won't be the first time that Microsoft launches a technology and then years later it retires. Something like that happened to Silverlight, for example. But it seems like it's been broadly adopted. Still, there is Angular and React are major competitors for front-end development. So I will say yes, but cautiously. I mean, it has a less expensive learning curve, because I mean, if you're coming from the .NET development world, you won't have any troubles to adopting this technology. But I'll say that you can use it, but cautiously. That's my thinking.
Thank you, Javier. Okay, Marco, do you recommend using Blazor for your next project, and why?
Yeah, basically yes. Just extending a little bit on the WebAssembly part. So I do have a little more faith that Blazor won't be retired as soon as other Microsoft technologies. I mean, it will for sure, but it might evolve into something else just because of the WebAssembly part. So that is something that is coming really strong to our world, and especially with the WebAssembly system interface, which is a new development for making WebAssembly run locally on computers. So leveraging the local resources of your device or your system, but making local applications using WebAssembly. So basically taking web development out of the browser. So since that is coming, that might be something that is really worth looking into, and there's a lot of people that is putting a lot of faith in that. So there was this guy Solomon Hykes, the creator of Docker once said that if WebAssembly and WebAssembly system interface were created some years before, Docker wouldn't have existed, just because it's one of the newest bets of everybody. So I hope that Blazor will stick around for a little while longer than some other Microsoft technologies. So in short, yes. Also, you can program progressive web apps, as which is the concept that I mentioned before, using Blazor, and eventually you will be able to program local applications using Blazor if everything goes as expected in the next few years. So yeah.
Thank you, Marco.
You stopped sharing, by the way, I believe.
Am I not? Because I think the call was disconnected from my end for some seconds.
There it is.
Okay, thank you. Rodolfo, would you recommend Blazor and why?
Personally, I do not recommend Blazor. I have very strong negative opinions about it. For example, Microsoft encourages people to use it, and you could say that every Microsoft conference or Microsoft event has at least one talk about Blazor. But the truth is that Microsoft, from like an outside perspective, doesn't use Blazor internally. If you look at the Microsoft careers page, you'll find only 2 Blazor positions open right now. And actually, when Blazor came up, one of the first things that came to my mind was Silverlight. The technology that this technology existed from like 2007 to 2015, maybe. And when Microsoft stopped supporting it, a lot of applications had to be rewritten. It was not a natural transition to another technology because Microsoft didn't offer an alternative to Silverlight, which is the opposite with Xamarin and .MAUI. I mean, it's like a natural upgrade or transition. And I'm not able to say with 100% certainty that Blazor is the next Silverlight. It's just kind of like a feeling. And I also feel that some developers are staying away from Blazor because they remember what happened to Silverlight, me being one of them. And I also feel that Blazor is like Microsoft's last attempt to get their foot in the door for the front-end frameworks market. And I think it's going to die. I mean, I hope it dies. No, I think it's going to die. I would stick to other front-end technologies. And yeah, I mean, React is a good alternative to Blazor. Yadira.
Okay, thank you. Jesus.
Okay, I would recommend using Blazor only if you need to create an application that must be on web and also on 2 platforms, Android and iOS. Why? Because there is one thing with Blazor called Blazor's hybrid. So basically your whole application, you write it once for your web. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're going to use web server or the server model or the WebAssembly model. You can embed your Blazor application inside your MAUI application using one of the components one of the components called Blazor View, and also can be embedded into WPF if you still have some platform or if you have an application still running on WPF, can be also embedded there. And also, if you don't want to if you want to stop duplicating code, probably could be a good alternative, because on Blazor, basically you can reuse your C# Poco model or your DTU into Blazor. You don't need to, for example, with React, you have your model on the backend side, and then you need to create or write the same model on the UI. And if you make a change, you need to do that change on both sides. That's one of the things that Blazor will help with. Another thing is that you don't need to learn a new language. I mean, you can use C# and HTML basically, and CSS. So if you don't actually know TypeScript or JavaScript or React with TypeScript or with JavaScript, or if you don't know Angular and want to learn something for UI, probably will be good to take a look into Blazor. For production, as I said, only if you need to provide something to multiple platforms will be an option. If not, then I think for now it will be safe to stick with React, but in the future, probably Blazor could. I mean, it looks like Microsoft is betting or betting a lot on this platform. It's basically the next, or the front-end UI alternative from Microsoft, alternative to React or Angular. So probably, yeah, we should keep Blazor in the scope for the next years. Probably doesn't make any bad to learn something or have some experience with Blazor.
Thank you very much, Jesus. Okay, so we reached the end of the questions we had to discuss. And now we're doing a questions and answer section. And whoever is here on this call, if you have any question for the participants, please raise your hand so they can answer your questions, your concerns. I don't see any.
I know Ismael always has good questions. He always comes up with interesting questions.
Who?
Ismael, he has asked.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I was wondering if, well, what is your opinion about a pure web app? I mean, one without any native things. I don't know how much is the load of the native features, or how important is it for new developments? I mean, with the new devices, we have the camera, we have some the touch screen. Well, are the web development is still in the market? I mean, as a pure web apps.
I think I can speak to that, Yadira. Yeah, that you can write a web app and stay away from native applications. But in my very personal experience, clients usually end up wanting a native application or an app, right? Not really the website, but clients end up wanting an app. So you have to fulfill their requests.
I think it depends on what your application has to do. I'll say go with a web app only if you don't have to access the device resources like the camera or any other hardware, the sensors, for example. I'll say that if you don't need any of that, you can go with a simple web app. I think development will be faster. But if you have to access the device, the storage, whatever, you probably might need to go with something like Xamarin or MAUI or React Native. That's my answer to that.
I think I was on mute. Yeah, I was on mute. Yeah, well, I think the answer, or I'm gonna build upon what Rodolfo and Javier told. You definitely can still work only with a web application, but only if you focus your development first on mobile and then grow your application into a desktop size. If you start doing everything at desktop size, and then by the end you want to plan 2 or 3, one sprint into making it mobile, will be very hard to do it. So otherwise, you can start from making it mobile friendly, and then you can focus on getting the application working on desktop environments. But at the end, I think most of the clients will be happy with that. And if they still need some specific stuff, like, oh, I want to take pictures on the go and upload stuff. I don't know. I want to. I need to take advantage of the mobile environment and not just looking at data and writing some forms. Probably they will ask for an application, but these scenarios probably Blazor could be a good alternative.
I would also agree with that part. The WebAssembly compilation would make use of the local resources better than having a web app if you actually don't need it. So all of the devices are getting way more advanced every day. So, and the prices for cloud processing is getting more and more expensive, just because we need to make faster and more robust applications. So if you can leverage whatever device the client already has, yeah, that would be probably better too.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other question?
I have a question, Yadira, for ourselves. I'm a little, for example, about Blazor. It's not very adopted. There's not a lot of adoption for Blazor technologies. Isn't that kind of like a concern or like a red flag for the rest of us that we shouldn't use it? Maybe I'm wrong about Blazor. Maybe I should consider Blazor as a good option. That's why I'm asking that.
I believe that, well, related to that, if you're still thinking of Silverlight, I feel like Silverlight was like an alternative to Flash, Adobe Flash, and you know what happened to Adobe Flash. So that's the reason I believe that Silverlight was just leave it. And I don't believe that this will be the case with Blazor yet. I mean, they are betting heavily on WebAssembly, and the WebAssembly it has been there for a bit of time. So probably if WebAssembly hasn't died yet, probably Blazor will still keep live with that.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that. Also, the tendency for some web developers is getting to adopt the WebAssembly system interface, which is developing in WebAssembly for local applications. So regardless if you choose Blazor or not, the only way we have to program for WebAssembly is Blazor. So it will get you closer to what we are trying to get to in the future, or at least what the tendency seems to be. There are other languages that were already before Blazor, like Rust, for example, that already work with WebAssembly. So it's not something new. But the bet is not having a proprietary technology on Microsoft behalf. They're just trying to leverage what WebAssembly is, or at least that's what I believe. And I also agree that, of course, Silverlight was an alternative to Flash, but this is not an alternative to something else. It's just jumping into a way in which .NET developers can work with WebAssembly.
I see Antonio has a question.
Yes, thank you, Rodolfo. So far, I mean, I've been playing with Blazor since it came out. I was playing with it like the last year. So far, I don't see any other reason to use it than if I have to use multi-threading. But that would be the only reason. And even though the fact that the whole environment, that all the other libraries that you are using for, I don't know, making charts or doing some cool animations and all that stuff, everything is already in JavaScript. So to use those libraries, you have to do this extra step. So is there other reason you see that a reason of really good weight to use Blazor other than just the multi-threading? Because in the end, development is always and more in when you are as a contractor is time, and the best thing you can do to improve your development time is to use the libraries that are already there, and there is not much for Blazor. In the end, you are going to have to make that bridge to still use JavaScript in the libraries. So other than multi-threading, is there another reason, a really good way to use Blazor?
Yeah, I can answer that. If you, well, I think that we are going to start seeing more Blazor implementations in the future after the release of .NET MAUI. I mean, they are pushing this, even if in Visual Studio, there are a couple of templates. One of those templates is create a mobile application multi-platform using Blazor. So they are also, well, with MAUI, they are also like promoting or marketing Blazor, so you can use Blazor to write mobile applications. And if you only need to really write one web application that will be also run on your devices or on your desktop natively. So that could be another reason to use Blazor.
Yeah, just having the ability to have multi-platform progressive web apps done in the same language that you're already familiar with is more than enough, I believe, to also look into Blazor. I don't know exactly what you mean by multi-threading.
Okay. Yeah, the thing is JavaScript is single-threaded, okay, in the web browser. And WebAssembly, with the assembly you get with the WebAssembly architecture, it's multi-threaded. So I mean, yeah, it's cool that you can write one code base and distribute it. But the reality is sometimes you really like, if you're going to do front end, it's JavaScript. JavaScript is king right now. Why? Because there are a lot of libraries out there, a lot of tools that Blazor doesn't have right now. Even though Blazor it's been around for a year and a half, I think. I've been looking at it, and I don't see much progress. So just multi-threading, the ability that you can really process a lot of stuff in the front end, which I mean the front end is not for that, not in the current state of what the front end is. Well, that's the only reason I see.
No, I don't actually really agree with that. I mean, okay. I mean, that's the only reason you see that's okay. I would guess for somebody that's been developing their whole life with C# is more familiar to work with something like Blazor and having it work so fast. I don't know. I also like the offline capabilities that it gives you and how you can install whatever app you develop on whichever platform. That's something that I actually really enjoy. Is that something that you can't do with plain JavaScript? But yeah, I mean, it's either or, right? You need to still, you say JavaScript, but of course you can't or you won't use JavaScript by itself. You for sure are referring to some other framework like Angular or React or something else, not exactly JavaScript by itself. So it's the same. If you want to learn something, I would recommend learning something that moves towards the future, being WebAssembly. So I don't know how difficult it could be to have any of those frameworks work with WebAssembly as Blazor does out of the box. But yeah, other than that, I mean, that's okay.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Antonio, for your question. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. I don't think we have time for another question, but no one has raised their hands either, so we're good. Thank you very much for the participants, for this discussion, and thank you very much for the attendees. And we're wrapping up this meeting. We still have 2 minutes for a very, very quick question, if anyone has one. It has to be very quick.
Well, I could ask how heavy is this solution? I mean, Blazor, as Microsoft is used to make very heavy solutions. What do you think?
I guess I can answer that. Since I think it behaves similar to a front-end application that is written on React.js or Angular. The only problem is that since it's running in this thing that it's called WebAssembly, it's gonna take longer times to bootstrap because it has to download the net framework runtime in your browser. So the first time is gonna take longer to load rather than a web application. That's the only caveat. But once it's on your computer, the idea is that it behaves the same as any desktop application. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you, Javier. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining this discussion. And we are reaching out the end of this meeting. Have an excellent afternoon, rest of your day. Thank you.
Yo.
Good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.